summer grain was over 142 million tons, up by 0.9%, and that of early rice was over 27 million tons, up by 3.9%. The output of autumn grain reached over 499 million tons, up by 0.7%. By species, the output of rice was over 211 million tons, up by 1.1%. Wheat, over 134 million tons, up by 0.5%. Corn, over 260 million tons, almost the same as that of last year with a slight decline. Soybean, 19.6 million tons, up by 8.3%. The total output of pork, beef, mutton, and poultry last year was 76.33 million tons, down by 0.1% over last year. Of the total output of beef was 6.72 million tons, mutton 4.92 million tons, poultry 23.61 million tons, eggs 34.68 million tons, milk 34.4 million tons, pork 41.13 million tons. At the end of 2020, pigs and breeding sows registered in stock were up by 31% and 35.1% respectively. Second, industrial production continued to grow and high-tech manufacturing and equipment manufacturing enjoyed faster growth. The total value added of industrial enterprises above the designated size increased by 2.8% over last year. In terms of ownership, value added of the state-owned enterprises grew by 2.2%. That of the shareholding enterprises up by 3%, that of enterprises funded by foreign investors and investors from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan up by 2.4%, and private enterprises up by 3.7%. In terms of sectors, value added of mining was up by 0.5%, manufacturing 3.4%, production and supply of electricity, thermal power, gas, and water up by 2%. The value added of the high-tech manufacturing and equipment manufacturing went up by 7.1% and 6.6% respectively, or 4.3 percentage points and 3.8 percentage points higher than that of the large industrial enterprises. Specifically, production of industrial robots, new energy vehicles, integrated circuits, and microcomputer equipment grew by 19.1%, 17.3%, 16.2%, and 12.7% year-on-year respectively. In the fourth quarter, the total value added of large industrial enterprises grew by 7.1% year-on-year, 1.3 percentage points higher than that in the third quarter. In December, the total value added of the large industrial enterprises grew by 7.3% year-on-year, 0.3 percentage point higher than that in November. In 2020, the national industrial capacity utilization rate reached 74.5%. In the fourth quarter, that rate reached 78%, 1.3 percentage points higher than that in the third quarter. In the first 11 months, the profits made by large industrial enterprises were over 5,744 billion yuan, up by 2.4% year-on-year, 1.7 percentage points higher than that in the first 10 months. Specifically, the total profits made by the large industrial enterprises in November went up by 15.5% year-on-year, maintaining a double-digit growth for the sixth consecutive month. Third, service sector recovered gradually, and modern service industries demonstrated very good momentum. In 2020, the index of services production was the same as that of last year. The value added of the information, communication, software, and information technology services, and that of financial services grew by 16.9% and 7% year-on-year, 14.8 percentage points and 4.9 percentage points higher than that of the tertiary industry. In the fourth quarter, that figure grew by 7.7% year-on-year, 3.4 percentage point points higher than that in the third quarter. In December, the index grew by 7.7% year-on-year. In the first 11 months, business revenue of service enterprises grew by 1.6% year-on-year, of which that of information communication, software and information technology services, and that of scientific research and technology services grew by 13.5% and 9.9% respectively. 11.9 percentage points and 8.3 percentage points higher than that of large service enterprises. In December, the business activity index for services was 54.8%, staying above the expansion range. If we look at market expectation, the expansion range was 60% and above, staying above the high expansion range for 6 months in a row. Fourth, market sales recovered fast and upgraded consumer goods witnessed faster growth. In 2020, total retail sales of consumer goods reached over 39,000 billion yuan, down by 3.9% over last year. Specifically, the consumer spending of large enterprises reached over 14,000 billion yuan, down by 1.9%. By different areas, the urban areas retail sales reached over 33,000 billion yuan, down by 4%, and in rural areas it was over 4,000 billion yuan, down by 3.2%. Grouped by consumption patterns, the income of catering was over 3,900 billion yuan, down by 16.6%, and the retail sales of goods were over 35,000 billion yuan, down by 2.3%. The sales growth of upgraded consumer goods sped up. In the fourth quarter, the retail sales of communication equipment, cosmetics, gold, silver, and jewelry in large enterprises grew by 26%, 21.2%, and 17.3% respectively. That is 16 percentage points, 71 and 7.1 and 5 percentage points higher than that in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, the consumer spending grew by 4.6% year-on-year, 3.7 percentage points higher than that in the third quarter. In December, consumer spending grew by 4.6% year-on-year. In 2020, the total online retail sales reached over 11,000 billion yuan, grew up by 10.9% year-on-year. Specifically, the online retail sales of physical goods were over 9,700 billion yuan, up by 14.8%, accounting for 24.9% of the total retail sales of consumer goods, or 4.2 percentage points higher than that of last year. Fifth, investment in fixed assets rebounded steadily, and investment in high-tech industries and the social sector grew rapidly. In 2020, the investment in fixed assets reached over 5 trillion yuan, up by 2.9% over that of last year. Specifically, infrastructure investment was up by 0.9%, manufacturing down by 2.2%, and real estate development up by 7%. The floor space of commercial buildings sold reached over 1,760 million square meters. The total sales of commercial buildings were over 1.7 trillion yuan, up by 8.7%. The growth of investment in the three industries shifted to positive. Specifically, investment in primary industry went up by 19.5%, that in the secondary industry up by 0.1%, and in the tertiary industry up by 3.6%. Private investment stood at 2.89 trillion yuan, up by 1%. The investment in high-tech industries grew by 10.6%. 7.7 percentage points higher than the total investment, of which the investment in high-tech manufacturing and high-tech services grew by 11.5% and 9.1% respectively. In terms of high-tech manufacturing, investment in pharmaceutical manufacturing, in computers and office devices grew by 28.4% and 22.4% respectively. In terms of high-tech services, investment in e-commerce services and information services grew by 22% and 20.2% and 15.2% respectively. Investment in social sector went up by 11.9%, 9 percentage points higher than the total investment. Specifically, investment in health, education went up by 29.9% and 12.3% respectively. Sixth, foreign trade achieved positive growth and trade mix continued to improve. In 2020, the total value of imports and exports was over 3.2 trillion yuan, an increase of 1.9% over last year. Total value of export was 1.79 trillion yuan, up by 4%. The trade balance was over 3,000 billion in surplus. The imports and exports of general trade accounted for 59.9% of the total value of the imports and exports. The imports and exports by private enterprises accounted for 46.6% of the total value. Specifically, total value of exports went up by 10.9%, import down by 0.2%. Trade balance had a surplus. Seventh, growth of consumer prices slowed and producer prices for industrial products dropped. In 2020, consumer price went up by 2.5% over last year, lower than the 2.9% growth of last year, and also lower than expected annual target of about 3.5%. Price went up by 2.3% in urban areas and 3% in rural areas. Prices for food, tobacco, and alcohol went up by 8.3%, clothing down by 0.2%, housing by 0.4%, articles and services for daily use remain the same, transportation and communication down by 3.5%, education, culture, and recreation up by 1.3%, medical services and healthcare up by 1.8%, other articles and services up by 4.3%. In terms of food, tobacco, and alcohol prices, grain prices went up by 1.2%, fresh vegetables up by 7.1%, and pork by 49.7%. Core CPI, excluding the prices of food and energy, went up by 0.8%. In December, the consumer price went up by 0.2% year-on-year and up by 0.7% month-on-month. In 2020, the producer prices for industrial products went down by 1.8% over last year, and in December, it went down by 0.4% year-on-year and up by 1.1% month-on-month. The purchasing prices for industrial producers went down by 2.3% over last year, and in December, it maintained the same level year-on-year or up by 1.5% month-on-month. Eighth, employment was generally stable and surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas lowered to the level of last year. In 2020, the newly added jobs in urban areas totaled 11.86 million, which is notably higher than expected goal of 9 million and achieved the 131% of the whole year target. In December, the surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas was 5.2%, the same as that of last year. Specifically, the surveyed unemployment rate for labor force aged 25 to 59 was 4.7%, the same as that of last year. In 2020, urban average surveyed unemployment rate was 5.6%, lower than expected target of around 6%. In December, the urban surveyed unemployment rate in 31 major cities was 5.1%. At the end of 2020, registered unemployment rate in urban areas was 4.24%, lower than a target of around 5.5%. Number of rural migrant workers reached 285 million, 5.17 million less than that of last year, or down by 1.8%. Specifically, local migrant workers totaled 116 million, down by 0.4%. Migrant workers that go outside their hometown totaled 169 million, down by 2.7%. The average monthly income of migrant workers was a little over 4,000 yuan, up by 2.8% over last year. Ninth, resident income grew at the same pace as the economy, and urban-rural per capita income ratio continued to narrow. In 2020, the per capita disposable income of residents was 32,189 yuan, a nominal increase of 4.7% over that of last year, and a real increase of 2.1% after deducting price factors, which was generally at the same pace as the growth of economy. The per capita disposable income of urban households was 43,834 yuan, a nominal growth of 3.5% and a real growth of 1.2%. Per capita disposable income of rural households was 17,000 yuan, a nominal growth of 6.9% and a real growth of 3.8%. The per capita disposable income of urban households was 2.56 times that of rural households, 0.08 less than the ratio of last year. The median of the per capita disposable income was 27,000 yuan, a nominal increase of 3.8% over that of last year. Taking the per capita disposable income of households by income quintile, that of the low-income group reached 7,869 yuan, the lower middle income group 16,443 yuan, middle income group 26,249 yuan, the upper middle income group 41,172 yuan, and the high income group 80,294 yuan. In 2020, the per capita consumption expenditure was 21,210 yuan, a nominal decline of 1.6%, a real decline of 4%. Specifically, per capita spending of urban house residents was a little over 27,000 yuan, nominal decline of 3.8%. Rural residents' per capita spending was over 13,000 yuan, a nominal growth of 2.9%. On the whole, the national economy in 2020 recovered steadily, and notable results was achieved in stabilizing employment and ensuring people's livelihood. A decisive success was made in eradicating extreme poverty, and the 13th Five-Year Plan came to a successful conclusion. We are on course to complete the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects. That being said, the changing dynamics in the external environment brings a multitude of uncertainties, and the foundation of economic recovery is yet to be consolidated. Going forward, we will follow the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, implement the decisions at the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee and the Central Economic Work Conference, seek progress while maintaining stability, base ourselves on the new development stage, pursue new development philosophy, and foster a new development paradigm. We will resolutely deepen reform and opening up and innovation, consolidate and expand the gains made in epidemic prevention and control, and take solid steps to ensure stability in 6 key areas and provide safeguards on 6 fronts. Will deliver macro policies in a scientific and targeted manner to keep the economic performance within a reasonable range and ensure a good start for the 14th five-year plan period. Thank you. Now the floor is open for questions. Thank you. With CCTV, in 2020, in the face of severe impact of COVID-19 and a challenging international environment, Chinese economy gradually recovered after a decline in the first quarter. How do you comment on the overall performance of the Chinese economy? Have the targets all been fulfilled?
Well, thank you. This is a very important question. The year 2020 is extraordinary in a history of the People's Republic of China. Facing a challenging and complex domestic and international circumstances, particularly COVID-19, under the firm leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, different regions and departments have put people's lives front and center, made steady progress while maintaining stability, coordinated epidemic control and economic and social development, buffered up macro policies, ensured stability and supports in 12 key areas, and made important strategic outcomes in containing the virus. Main targets for economic and social development have been met, and better than our expected. The 13th five-year plan have been completed, and a moderately prosperous society will be built. First, major progress has been made in coordinating epidemic control and economic and social development. With the whole nation united as one, China is one of the first countries to control the virus, reopen the economy, and register positive growth. In late March, we have basically stemmed domestic spread of the virus. In mid-April. Over 90% of large industrial businesses have been reopened. In Q2, GDP grew by 3.2%, reversing the negative trend. In Q3, it went up by 4.9%, Q4 6.5%. For 2020, economy grew by 2.3%. It is expected that China will become the only country in the world to register positive economic growth. There are 18 major economies with the world in the world with a size over 100 trillion US dollars. Most of them, the economic data have not been released. China has so far been the only country that have registered positive growth. In 2020, China's GDP exceeded 100 trillion US dollars, reaching 101.6 trillion yuan. Second, decisive progress has been made in ending poverty. All impoverished population under the current poverty line have been eradicated from poverty. 832 poor counties have escaped poverty. Extreme poverty have been ended in China's history. Income for rural residents in poor areas grew really fast in 2020 in Guangxi, Sichuan, Guizhou, Yunnan, Gansu, Ningxia, and Xinjiang. The nominal growth of per capita disposable income of rural residents were all faster than the country's average. They are about 0.2 to 1.7 percentage points higher. Third, notable progress has been made in macro control. Quarterly indicators have returned to normal. In Q4, GDP grew by 6.5% year-on-year, 0.7 percentage points faster than the same period of last year. Value added of large industries grew by 7.1%, 1.1 percentage points faster than the same period of last year. Employment and pricing targets have been met in 2020. 11.86 million new jobs have been created, outperforming our targets. Surveyed unemployment rate was 5.6% on average, lower than the 6% forecast. CPI grew by 2.5%, lower than the forecast of around 3.5%. Income growth was basically in tandem with economic growth. Per capita disposable income grew by 2.1% in real terms. That was basically in line with our economic growth. International balance has been improved. In 2020, the balance of foreign reserve was 3.2165 trillion US dollars, 108.6 billion US dollars more than the end of last year. Per capita GDP, energy consumption went down by 0.1% compared with the previous year. So major targets for macro policy control listed in the government report have been met, and we have outperformed our forecasts. Policies to ensure stability and support in 12 key areas were very effective. Employment has been safeguarded. In December, the surveyed unemployment rate for people aged from 25 to 59 was 4.7%, about the same as previous year. People's basic living needs have been met. The per capita transfer net income grew by 8.7% in nominal terms, which point to a stronger support to meet people's living needs. Market entities have been more vibrant. In the first 11 months, the profit of large industrial companies grew by 2.4%. The monthly income has been double-digit for 6 months running. Food supply has increased. Food production in 2020 was 1.3390 jing, was equivalent to 0.5 kilograms. Industrial and supply chains have ensured stable function. In 2020, in the 41 categories of large industries, 25 of them saw increase of their value-added. That's 5 more compared with the first 3 quarters. Local government functions have been maintained. In the first 11 months, among the general budget expenditure, those related to social insurance and employment, housing, and policy eradication grew by 9.8%, 9.5%, and 9.2% respectively. So we have that's what I want to say about ensuring safeguards in 6 key areas. Fifth, reform and opening up have created development miracles. Companies of different ownerships all saw their profit going up. In November, the profit of state-owned large industrial companies saw their profit registered double-digit growth, and they have been growing for 6 months running. In the first 11 months, the profit of foreign invested companies and companies with Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan investment grew by 4.3%. Private-owned large industrial companies saw their profit grew by 1.8%, while their profit went down by 0.5% in the previous 3 quarters. Supply-side structural reform has been deepened in Q4. Industrial capacity utilization rate was 78%, 1.3 percentage points higher than the previous 3 quarters, reaching a record high since 2013. A reform of deregulation has been deepened. In the first 11 months, 22,000 new companies have been registered. In 2020, the value-added of high-tech manufacturing grew by 7.1%. That's 4.3 percentage points faster than all large industrial companies. Online retail sales of commodities grew by 14.8%. Foreign trade and foreign investment grew faster than we expected. Given the shrinking of global trade and cross-border investment in 2020, China's trade in goods broke a historical record. It went up by 1.9%. In the first 11 months, paid-in investment grew by 6.3%. 6. In fully building a moderately prosperous society, we have made great and historical achievements. The major targets listed in the 13th five-year plan have been completed. Per capita domestic GDP was over $10,000. Our economic structures have been improved. Major projects have been completed. Our strengthening economy, science, and overall national capacity have been greatly improved. The three critical battles have made important progress, and the outcomes of poverty eradication has been recognized by the world. The first round of poverty eradication survey shows that all of the 13.85 million registered impoverished households have met their living needs and can have access to compulsory education, basic medical services, and housing, as well as safe drinking water. Pollution control has been very effective. For the 337 cities, the number of days with good air quality reached 87%. Progress has been made in preventing and resolving major risks. Financial risks have been within control. The balance of local government debt has been within the ceiling approved by the National People's Congress. People's living quality has been greatly improved. For 5 years, over 60 million new jobs have been created. We have built the world's largest social insurance network. Over 1.3 billion people have been covered by basic medical insurance. We have made continued advancement of the five-sphere integrated plan, namely in our economic, political, cultural, social, and ecological development. The whole party and the whole nation has been very confident, proud, and united. And in conclusion, in an extraordinary year, China's economy has made extraordinary achievements. Our performance has been recognized by our people, by the world, and can go down in history. These achievements are made in the teeth of COVID-19. In a serious recession of the world economy and an increasingly complex and challenging external environment, they are truly hard-won. They are the result of the firm leadership and science-based decision of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and the result of the unity and hard work of the whole nation. They truly represent the strength of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Thank you. Next question, please. With CCTV, in 2020, China's GDP exceeded 100 trillion. What does it mean for China's economy, and what does it mean for fostering a new development paradigm?
This is a pertinent question. Like I said earlier, GDP passed the 100 trillion yuan mark. It means that China's economic strength, science and technology strength, and comprehensive national strength have crossed a new mark. It is a major milestone for fully building a moderately prosperous society and for us to embark on a new journey toward fully establishing a modern socialist country. First, a marked continued increase of China's comprehensive national strength. In 2020, GDP stood at 101.6 trillion RMB, crossing the 100 trillion yuan mark for the first time. 20 years ago, in 2000, China's GDP passed 10 trillion yuan, and in 2012, it passed 50 trillion yuan. In 2020, the figure crossed 100 trillion yuan. In other words, within 20 years, GDP expanded by 10 times. It is truly a remarkable achievement. According to the annual average exchange rate, in 2020, China's GDP was $14.7 trillion, ranking second in the world and accounting for, we estimate, about 17% of the global economy. In 2020, GDP per capita exceeded $10,000 for 2 years running, making China among the upper middle income countries, and the gap with high-income countries further narrowed. Second, a marked continued progress in our science and technology capabilities. Over the past year, an array of major scientific and technological achievements have been made. The Chang'e 5 lunar probe was successfully landed on the moon and took back lunar sample. Tianwen-1 Mars probe was successfully launched. The 500-meter aperture spherical telescope was launched. BDS-3 global satellite navigation system was officially launched. The Fendozhe deep sea manned submersible pushed beyond 10,000 meters under the sea. The quantum computer Jiuzhang was successfully made. Innovation was getting more active, injecting new impetus into high-quality economic development. Third, it means China's economic strength has been improving remarkably. The industrial and agricultural production capacity went up significantly. Grain output in 2020 made a historic high, ranking first in the world. The output of over 220 categories of industrial goods ranked world top, and the value added of manufacturing sector has ranked number 1 in the world for 11 years in a row. Infrastructure keeps improving. The total mileage of high-speed rail was 38,000 kilometers, and the mileage of highway was 150,000 kilometers. Over 200 million devices were connected with a 5G network, all ranking number 1 in the world. Modern services including information, business, R&D, and marketing kept improving, and the ability of financial sector to serve the real economy is steadily growing. Social productivity has reached a new level. Fourth, this has laid a solid foundation for a new development paradigm. The new development paradigm, featuring with domestic circulation as the mainstay and international and domestic circulations reinforcing each other, has its key in exploring domestic demand. China has the world's largest population and the largest middle-income group. In 2020, total retail sales of consumer goods was close to 40 trillion yuan, and final consumption exceeded 55 trillion yuan. Capital formation was approaching 44 trillion yuan. All of this will further bring to bear the strength of our mega-sized market. On the other hand, we are well aware that China remains the largest developing country in the world. Our per capita GDP is still a bit lower than the world average. We are still a long way behind major advanced economies. The fact that we're still at a primary stage of socialism has remained unchanged. The imbalance and inadequate development remain pronounced. The gaps between urban and rural areas and among regions remain big. The innovation capacity cannot meet the amount of high-quality development. We still have a long way to go and need tremendous efforts to achieve the long-range goals and build China into a modern socialist country. Thank you. With Reuters. In 2020, the total retail sales of consumer goods dropped by 3.9%, and last month the growth was also sluggish. Was that a result of COVID-19? This year, what new measures will be taken to stimulate consumption, and how do you predict export and investment this year? Thank you. I see you've read carefully these statistics and raised this question. Like you said, retail, sales, and consumption, we believe, plays a fundamental role in driving growth. In the past year, consumer spending did drop if we look at the whole year's figure, but in the third and fourth quarter, they rebounded. In Q4, consumer spending actually grew by 4.6%. So it's beginning to get closer to the normal level. Like you said, in December, consumer spending had some fluctuations, and partly that's because in some localities there were sporadic cases. But if you look at the overall trend, consumption and retail sales continues to play a fundamental role in boosting growth. For this year, 2021, we estimate, it's still early, we believe that there are a lot of favorable conditions sustaining the recovery of the economy. There are good conditions in place to sustain sound recovery. Now we still have pressure in preventing case import and domestic rebound, but the fundamentals sustaining long-term growth have remained unchanged. We have the favorable conditions. First, we have good material foundation. For 6 years in a row, the grain production has exceeded 1.3 trillion jin for 6 years in a row, and value added of industry was over 30 trillion yuan.
Infrastructure has been improved. Transport, energy, and water conservation have provided stronger support. This has made us well prepared to various risks and challenges to support economic recovery and meet people's basic living needs in 2021. Second, a well-established industrial system. With years of efforts, we have put in place the world's most complete industrial system. Our trade in goods was the largest in the world, and we are the largest trading partner of over 120 countries and regions. Despite COVID-19, our industrial system has proven its strong capacity of organization and adjustment and resilience. In response to uncertainties in 2021, the production and coordination capacity of our industrial system will continue to play its role. Third, a vast market. China has 1.4 billion people, a middle-income group of over 400 million, and we have the world's most promising domestic market. We have a unique strength with our mega-size market. As per capita income goes up, the adjustment and upgrading of consumption will contribute to the adjustment and upgrading of industrial structure, investment structure, and regional economic structure, providing internal driving force for sustained economic growth. No matter how things will change globally, the vast domestic market will be where we base our efforts and maneuver. Fourth, strengthening science and technology. China has been very active in scientific and innovation. We rank the world's second in terms of research investment, and we have the world's largest patent applications. Whether it is the pandemic or other uncertainties, our emerging industries have enjoyed sound development. Industrial digitalization and digital industrialization have gained stronger momentum. This has contributed to online economic performance, and this is the driving force for high-quality economic growth. Fifth, rich human resources. China tops the world in terms of labor supply. We have nearly 900 million people aged from 16 to 59, and 200 million high-skilled professionals, and we have the world's largest number of researchers. This has provided sustained human capital and intellectual support for high-quality development. Particularly, the strong leadership of the party and systematic strength is the basic guarantee for sound and steady development of the economy and social tranquility. The great foresight and governance capacity of the party, the strength of the socialism with Chinese characteristic to pool resources for major undertakings, economic capacity, governance capacity, and well-calibrated macro policies have been very critical in coordinating economic and social development and epidemic control. There have been some resurgences domestically or internationally, but their impact on the economy are within control. The coronavirus still raging the world, and recently there have been some sporadic cases or even cluster cases domestically. They have brought some uncertainties to economic recovery. As you've said, in December, a slower growth of retail sales is a proof, but generally speaking, we have the experience and capacity to control the virus. We have accumulated rich experience in when cases are spots, prompt actions will be taken to stem the spread. Science-based containment measures, including vaccination, will help to control the spread of the virus. The well-calibrated measures have reduced the impact on people's lives and livelihood. Now, in most places, life are normal, economic performance has been stable, and the impact of the pandemic is within control. And of course, to maintain the economic performance within a proper range require continued efforts. You asked about investment and consumption policies. Following the instructions of the Fifth Plenum of the 19th CPC Central Committee and the Central Economic Work Conference, they will be rolled out to support consumption, employment, investment, regional development, and etc. We will overcome the difficulties lying ahead to maintain economic performance within a proper range to ensure sound and sustained development of China's economy. You also have a question about import and export, is that right? You asked about export, right? (2020 or 2021). So it's a forecast. Well, that's mainly the job of the NDRC, not the National Bureau of Statistics. Last year, like consumption, consumption has played a fundamental role, while investment has played a key role. I've shared with you some investment figures. In 2020, investment in the three industries and social sectors have registered positive growth, including infrastructure investment. While in 2021, about investment policies, we still need to shore up weak links and effectively leverage the role of investment. As for special government bonds, decisions have been made at the Central Economic Work Conference. We need to effective investment. As for foreign trade grew up against all odds. A few days ago, a press conference was held by the National Customs. In the first 2 quarters of 2020, foreign trade was heavily impacted by COVID-19. But after that, effective measures have been rolled out, and I've shared with you our industrial system, our well-functioning logistics, which have helped to meet some countries' demand for medical supplies and work from home equipments. So in Q3, foreign trade went up. While the virus is still raging the world, for all countries, they still have quite a large demand for medical supplies and products to meet people's living needs. While meeting our domestic demand, we need to meet foreign demands. Well, it is expected that we can keep on the momentum of our foreign trade. This is really a very comprehensive question. Next question, please. Well, can you share with us China's high-quality development in 2020 and what we can work on in 2021? Oh, this is also a very good question. Well, in 2020, amid the pandemic, which has impacted economy and development, different localities and government departments have worked to stabilize employment, safeguard people's livelihoods, stabilize economic fundamentals, and implement the new development philosophy and pursue high-quality development. We have deepened reform and opening up, fostered new growth drivers, and steadily improved the quality and efficiency of economic growth. First, innovation the primary driving force. New industries, business forms, and products have developed at a fast pace. In the first 11 months, the profit of large strategic emerging service companies went up by 8.6%, 7.0 percentage points faster than large service industries. Online commodity retail sales accounted for 24.9% in total retail sales of consumption goods. The production of industrial robots, new energy vehicles, and integrated circuit went up by 19.1%, 17.3%, and 16.2% respectively. Sci-tech SMEs. The number of sci-tech SMEs and high-tech companies was over 200,000, and we have made key breakthroughs in scientific explorations and researches both in outer space and in deeper sea. Second, domestic coordination. New progress has been made in transforming the industrial structure. The value added for equipment manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing went up by 6.6 and 7.1%. That's 3.8 and 4.3 percentage points faster than average. The value added of tertiary industry accounted for 54.5% of total GDP. And new progress has been made in adjusting the demand structure. Investment in high-tech industries and social sectors went up by 10.6 and 11.9%. That's 7.7 and 9.0 percentage faster than the average. The development gap between rural and urban areas continued to narrow. The income of rural residents grew faster than of urban residents, and urbanization rate of permanent residents was over 60%. Third, green development. Progress has been made in energy conservation and emission reduction. Per capita GDP energy consumption went up. The share of clean energy went up by 1 percentage point in total energy consumption. Environmental quality has been improved in 337 cities. PM 2.5 density went down by 8.3% compared with the previous year. In terms of water quality, in 1,940 surveyed samples of surface water, the share of samples with good water quality went up by 8.5 percentage points. Fourth, opening up. In 2020, we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, the 30th anniversary of opening up of Pudong. Their pioneering experience have played a modeling role and triggered driving force for economic development. As global trade and investment are remarkably shrinking, China's trade in goods and paid in foreign investment registered positive growth. While the data for the December has not been released, they have played an important role for stabilizing the economic fundamentals. The faster progress has been made in the Hainan Free Trade Port, and we have had active economic and trade exchanges with Belt and Road Corporation countries. RCEP was signed. China EU BIT completed its negotiations, and they have provided driving force for opening up and development. Fifth, an inclusive development that is shared by all. China has ended extreme poverty and region-wide poverty. Employment has been basically stable. Surveyed unemployment rate returned to the same level with the previous year. In February, it was 6.2%. People's living quality has been improved. A multi-tiered social insurance system has been fostered, and other social causes have been prospering. Asked about 2021. 2021 is the first year of the 14th Five-Year Plan, and the theme of the 14th Five-Year Plan is to promote high-quality development. We need to continue to prioritize development in governance, pursue innovative, coordinated, green, open, and shared development, lock in the progress made in containing the virus and resuming economic recovery, maintain economic performance within a proper range, and create a conducive environment for high-quality development. We need to improve quality and efficiency of development and synergize quality, structure, scale, speed, efficiency, and safety of development, and ensure that high-quality development is reflected in every link of the economy and society. Thank you. Next question, please.
We were talking about investment, consumption, and net export. Indeed, these are the three main drivers of growth. And your question is more direct. Today, we have released we will announce the breakdown of the contribution of these three drivers. In 2020, the final consumption rate was close to 55%. Between 2010 and 2019, the average consumption rate was 53.4%. And last year, despite COVID-19, final consumption accounted for 54.3%, 11.2 percentage points higher than capital formation. Consumption remains the cornerstone of a stable economic performance. If we look at the increment, the growth rate of consumption is also playing a bigger role. In Q4, the consumer spending went up by 4.6%, 3.7 percentage points higher than Q3. Consumer spending in Q4 grew by 2.6%, 1.2 percentage points higher than Q3. As the economy recovers, its contribution rate will go even higher. Net export plays a positive role in driving growth. We can't just look at the increment, we should also look at the aggregate. Export, the total share of import and export accounts for about 30% of the national economy, and that is true. That is a pretty big share given that China is a big economy. That share is higher than other major economies like the US and Japan. Net export does play an important role in driving growth. Relying on domestic demand is in keeping with the economics, And we need to better leverage the mega-sized domestic market in driving growth going forward. There is still big room for improvement for consumption to play a fundamental driving force for growth. The increment between 2013 and 2019 was about 60% to growth, and that is still lower than that of major economies, which have 70 or even 80% of their growth coming from consumption. After all, we are at different stages of development, so there's still a lot of space for us to increase people's spending capability, improving policies, and improving the environment. It's also important to leverage the role of investment. Investment played a positive role as the economy recovers. And going forward, we need to enhance effective investment and turn the high savings rate into concrete outcomes of investment. We also need to unswervingly open wider and better leverage consumption, investment, and net export. Your second question is about demographics. The 7th National Census was launched in November 1st last year. The over 7 million census takers went to the households to collect the data, and the on-site registration has been completed. And early this year, now we have the verification and quality check of the statistics. The national census is done every 10 years. The 6th national census was started in November 2, and the figures data was published in April next year. So for the 7th national census, the statistics will be published in April this year. It's still early. We can't offer specific data. The 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee laid out the guidelines on demographics and statistics, and from our perspective, the national census and regular survey will serve as a basis for policy making. Thank you. Thank you. With CNBC. My question is about some of the potential challenges for the economy this year. Consumption needs to play a bigger role in driving growth, and the COVID situation also poses challenges for China's economic performance. How do you respond?
Well, it is very important for us to get better prepared for uncertainties and disasters given COVID-19, as we have saw a second or even third wave of the pandemic in some countries. So there is an increasing uncertainty in the world. Domestically, as you have said, our economic recovery is not yet very solid. Well, for most of the major indicators, they have been outperformed, but for some structural indicators, things are not good. But of course, they need continued efforts, and we need to stick to the principle of making steady progress while maintaining stability and pursue steady economic recovery and ensure that it will remain in a proper range. We need to be aware of risks and challenges. We also need to be aware of opportunities and conducive conditions. While the challenges are unprecedented, but the opportunities are also unprecedented. And generally speaking, opportunities far outweigh challenges. And we are faced with some new opportunities, as well as new challenges. Well, thanks to macro policy control and the hard work of businesses, some challenges, if overcome, can be turned into opportunities. For example, COVID-19 itself is a big challenge. But because of scientific innovation, reform, and opening up, in the first half of last year, some offline consumption were brought online, in which process market entities and innovative approaches have played an important role. So a challenge has been turned into an opportunity. We've shared with you the development of online consumption, telemedicine, and etc. And when online is combined with offline, we will have a bigger strength. For the whole world, COVID-19 is still a grave challenge. China is faced with the pressure of preventing exported cases and domestic resurgence. But the pandemic has driven up the demand for medical supplies and work-from-home equipments, including office chairs and computers and etc. We have a complete industrial system and reliable international logistics. So this challenge is also turned into an opportunity. That's why we have achieved positive trade growth. It's not just about the numbers. Most importantly, it has met people's demand to responding to the virus globally. People's lives matter. Well, within China, we have put people's lives front and center. So we need to combine the economic data with both challenges and opportunities. China is still in a period of strategic opportunities. We need to harness our strengths to overcome difficulties and challenges and ensure sustained economic growth and performance. Thank you. In the interest of time, last one or two questions. Can you share with us what has been done to meeting people's living needs in 2020? And what's your view on the weakening consumption? And what about the income difference in different groups of people in both rural and urban areas?
People's livelihood is extremely important. Over the past year, a lot has been done to effectively offer strong protections to people's livelihood. So there's employment expanded, consumer prices were generally stable, and income continued to go up. As I said earlier, I've shared with you figures on employment. The main indicators of employment were better than expected. Urban jobs was over 11 million, higher than expected 9 million. And that was made possible with economic recovery and supportive policies. Urban surveyed unemployment rate was below the expected target. So our pro-job policies have paid off. Stabilizing employment was the top priority in macro regulation last year. The businesses as well as governments have played a positive role. When it comes to prices, in early 2020, due to multiple factors, food prices, especially that of pork, went up rapidly. And despite COVID-19, the local governments, departments, and businesses worked together to increase supply, especially the production of pork. And with their efforts by Q4 of last year, the stock of pigs were improved significantly, and also we have increased import of pork to ensure steady supply in the domestic market. So as a result, pork price in Q4 dropped markedly, and overall prices of foodstuffs were on a downward trajectory. Pork prices more than doubled in early 2020. It has been growing for 19 months running, but by Q4 last year, it dropped by 2.8%, 12.5%, and 1.3%. So it's on a downward track. And when it comes to income, the growth is better than expected. It is basically in sync with GDP growth. For the 4 quarters respectively, the actual growth rate of per capita disposable income was minus 3.9%, minus 1.3%, 0.6%, and 2.1%. So it was getting better gradually and was basically in sync with GDP growth. The transferred net income went up rapidly. The income from wage and business operation rebounded. The transferred net income growth is a reflection of the supportive policies. We revised up pension standards and stepped up social security, and ad hoc subsidy. So the transferred net income grew by 8.7% on average. Pension went up by 7.8%. Social remedy and subsidy went up by 18.7%, and livelihood subsidy increased by 12.7%. And also, the pro-job policies have helped to increase wage. The localities have introduced a slew of policies to stabilize employment. Last year, the average wage income grew by 4.3% year-on-year, and monthly income of migrant workers went up by 2.8%. Our policies to support businesses have also helped to increase business income. The tax relief policies and the financial supportive policies have helped to increase the household businesses' income. For the whole year, the household business income grew by 1.1%. The income gap between urban and rural area among regions was narrowed. I already shared with you the figure previously. The ratio of urban and rural per capita income was 2.56, and the income growth in central and western regions was faster than that of eastern region. So in the eastern region, it went up by 4.6%, central region 4.3%, western region 6%, and northeastern region 3.3%. So that was the nominal growth rate, but the real growth rate is the same. The income growth of low-income groups is higher than the average. The low-income groups' income grew by 6.6% nominally, and in rural area, the residents' per capita income increased by 9.8%, 5.1 percentage higher than national average. So whether you look at employment, prices, or income, the situation was getting better, and there are strong policies to support and protect people's well-being. Going forward, we will continue to promote steady economic recovery, roll out more supportive policies for key groups to further stabilize employment. We will ensure general stability in prices and offer protections for businesses and consolidate the basis sustaining growth in income. We will deepen reform of income distribution system and further narrow the income gap. Thank you. With China Daily. In 2020, all the three industries registered positive growth. What are some of the new features? And in the fourth quarter, has industrial production come back to the normal range?
Well, in your question, there is actually a conclusion. That is, in 2020, with national efforts, we have not only achieved overall positive growth, but also positive growth of all the primary, secondary, and tertiary industries. Our businesses have been steadily reopened, and the performance of the three industries have been improved. Now, most sectors of the three industries have achieved positive growth. First, the fundamental role of agriculture has been strengthened. agricultural production has overcome different impacts. We have had another harvest. Pig production has recovered at a faster pace. Poultry, egg, and dairy production went up steadily, and agricultural production was better than expected. Value added of the primary industry went up by 3%, which is quite a good number. Well, in terms of different quarters, in quarter one it was negative 3.2%, while in the last 3 quarters they were 3.3, 3.9, and 4.1% respectively. Modern agriculture has enjoyed good progress. We have picked and cultivated several new rice breeds with an average output of over 1,000 kilograms. Second, industrial production steadily recovered. Industries, particularly manufacturing, steadily rebounded. In 2020, value added of large industries went up by 2.8%, and that number for manufacturing was 3.4% in terms of quarters. It went up by negative 1.8% and positive 4.4, 5.8, and 7.1% respectively. Well, I think it partly answered your question. It has went back to the normal level. Pillar industries have provided a stronger support. Equipment manufacturing recovered at a faster pace. Its value added went up by 6.6%. That's 3.8 percentage points faster than average. And its contribution was 70.6% to overall large industrial growth. And it registered double-digit growth in Q3 and Q4. New industries and products developed robustly. The value added of large high-tech manufacturing went up by 7.1%, 4.3 percentage points faster than average. 3D printing equipment, smartwatches, civilian drones, integrated circuit, wafer, and other emerging and new products saw their production went up by 1 time. Third, service sector gradually recovered. After its declining in the beginning of 2020, it picked up. Major indicators continued to be improved, and market confidence has been strengthened. Value added of the service sector went up by 2.1%. In terms of different quarters, it went up by negative 5.2%, positive 1.9%, positive 4.3%, and positive 6.7% respectively. And these numbers are reaching our previous levels. New technology-led modern service sector enjoyed sound growth. In the first 11 months, the revenue of high-tech service sector, science-tech service sector, and strategic emerging service sector went up by 12, 11, and 8.6% respectively. That's all over about 10%. New business forms and models expanded rapidly. The pandemic has bolstered new business models, accelerated O2O integration, 5G, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things have been widely applied. Instant video, live commercing, and other online entertainment and marketing models continue to grow. Online officing, online education, and telemedicine continue to grow, and they have injected fresh impetus for economic development, and they will continue to play their role in 2021. That's what I want to say. In December, the value added of large industries went up by 7.3%. That's quite low in 2020, but it's still within a proper normal range if we look at more numbers from the previous 2 years. So we need to look at both traditional industries and emerging industries. In both processes, we have been picking up pace. We need to better integrate the 3 industries, and they all enjoy a bright prospect. They will unleash new potential. That's the end of today's press conference. Thank you, Mr. Ning. Thank you all.